And what happened on October 28th is going to have a long lasting effect for years to come. But what many of you might not have known, for example, let me see the hands up, for example. Can I see the hands up anybody today whose home is not yet up, whose house is not yet back up? Put your hands up. If your house, if you're not in your house and you're next door staying with a neighbor, anybody? Hands up. Good. Alright, so some persons in here are still homeless. I can hand over there. Good. And one of the best persons to speak to you today is myself. Because why I can speak to you is because of the experience. 30 years ago. How many years? 30 years ago, I was homeless. And the reason I was homeless, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, is because the house that I was living in, the landlord decided to take the doors off the house. At the time, I had a fractured left ankle, and my wife and I had a 2-week-old baby. So we had a 2-week-old baby and a fractured left ankle, and we were homeless. When I said homeless, we didn't know exactly where we were going. We didn't have anywhere to go. And what we had to do, ladies and gentlemen, we had to reinvent our life. It was very challenging. And in a similar way today, a lot of you are going through challenging situations. Whereby on October 28th, you saw your roof migrated without a visa and has returned since, and you're there astonished, pondering your next move. And we were in a similar situation. And what my wife and I can tell you, was it challenging? Yes. Was it problematic? Yes. But most importantly, we told ourselves that it's possible to reinvent our life and turn that around. And ladies and gentlemen, over the years I've managed to do that. And that's why I'm standing here today to you with my testimony. And I'm saying to many of you today, if you are going through challenging time, you can make a difference. And let me just say to you, like many of you, I went through this hurricane. The difference is my roof didn't went because my roof looked more like this. So my roof was standing. The only thing that happened to us significantly is that we had 2 windows that was, well, 2 windows that the wind affected. One of the windows was blown in completely and the house was flooded. There was a second window that the wind, if you notice how the wind stayed, when you realize you can't take off your roof, you say, let me try the door. And if you can't budge the door, you say, let me try the window. That's how the wind is, you know. But there's things to learn from that, because the same to us as adults, as children, whenever we're faced with challenges, if one thing doesn't work, then let's try another thing. And that's exactly the wind did with us. When one thing couldn't work, you try next thing, and you never stop until you get through. And I'm saying this to you, ladies and gentlemen, that was exactly how my wife and I was able to reinvent in our life. We tried something different. And we tried something different, and we tried something different. But one of the things I want to say to you, ladies and gentlemen, and I observe, and I know most of you have observed, when the hurricane ended, I observed nature. And there are some things that I learned, and I hope you were learning also. The first thing I saw was the mulberry tree. Anybody know mulberry tree? Huh? Anybody have a mulberry tree at your home? Anybody? What happened to your mulberry tree? Nothing. Wow. St. Elizabeth. In Westmoreland, anybody have a mulberry tree at your home in Westmoreland? Anybody? Or somebody have a fruit tree, mulberry tree? Anybody have a mulberry tree? Nobody had one? Okay. Well, what I noticed is that among all the fruit trees, one of the trees that stood out the most, had the least damage, was the mulberry tree. And one of the reasons the mulberry tree stood up, I realized, ladies and gentlemen, that it has a purpose. The mulberry tree realized that once the storm was over, the birds were going to be hungry. Hello? Somebody heard me? This time, the mulberry tree realized that the birds were going to be hungry. The birds were going to be homeless. The birds were going to need something to eat. And the mulberry tree had a purpose. So the mulberry tree had to withstand its ground because it realized that once the hurricane was over, the birds would need feed. Ladies and gentlemen, today I can attest to that fact that the mulberry tree was one of the first tree to fruit after the hurricane. And within the communities, I don't know what your experience is like, but even within Belmont, there are places that, anybody know the ball plate? Because I'm going to talk about him too, you know. Anybody know the ball plate? Alright. So even the ball plate within, so the ball plate, so we talk about the mulberry tree and its purpose. So we talk about the ball plate, or that other name is called white crowned dove. Now the ball plate or white crowned dove is one of those birds that feed very high in the sky and it's very shy. It doesn't like to come among humans. Right? However, listen to learn. When the storm was over, and it happened in previous storms also, the ball plate realized that just to come down off and punks and pride. Hello? Yeah, you have to come down off and punks and pride. It's the same to some of us today, ladies and gentlemen. If we had punks and pride, we need to come off of those punks and pride. Do not let the ball plate come off for your punks and pride. If you have to come down and feed, come down and feed. Humble yourself. Right? This is what the ball plate is saying now. If you have to humble yourself, humble yourself. So the ball plate come off and punks and pride and come down and he is now feeding today. Will he be feeding there all along? No. Sooner or later, once the blossom goes on, once the food goes on, the ball plate will go up and soar in the sky. And what it is saying to us, ladies and gentlemen, is that even if you find yourself at a particular place today, do not consider that as your permanent home. So if you're staying, for example, at a shelter, if you're staying in somebody's home, as soon as possible, do look at the ball plate, come off your pumps and pride, you come down, but decide to go back up also. I also noticed something. Anybody know the green lizard? Yes. Did you see the green lizard in your house after the hurricane? Yes. Hello? No. Anybody saw the green lizard? You know, where are you from? Celebrate. Well, in our Westwood, we have New Seal. Where I live, I have a farm. Look at that farm. After the hurricane, I have most green lizard me see. And guess what? The green lizard couldn't find out. So I saw all different types of lizards, you know. But the green lizard stood out. Why? Because they always stay at distance. They are green and they like to stay among something green because that's how they camouflage themselves. Because if you're green and you come and present yourself right, everybody would see you. So what they did, initially they like to stay among the trees where it's green. But when I look in my house, I see all sizes of green lizard. You call them green one. And there is it. They had to leave their comfort zone and live among us for some time. Today they are no longer there because they realized that it was a temporary state. And they realized that we didn't run them out of the house either, but they realized that sooner or later they need to go, so they are gone today. Alright? So we notice that with the green lizard, but also another one I want to speak about is the bee. Yes. The bee. Anybody saw the bees after the hurricane? Holy. Alright, the bees, this is very important. Bees contribute to over 33% of pollination in the world. And so without the bees, there would be no fruits, no vegetables. The bees realized how important it was. When the hurricane ended, the bees realized there were no food, but what they did? Anybody can tell what they did? Huh? They went around and they searched food wherever the food was. Because they were giving up. So all of those lessons, ladies and gentlemen, all of those lessons is to say to us that regardless of the situation we find ourselves in today, we are not to give up. Because if I didn't give up, and I can tell you, anybody see a book up there? You see a book down there? From Homelessness, I don't know where it is. Okay. Well, okay. Here it is. Out of every adverse